Today's episode is in part brought to you by Brilliant.org. Welcome back to another video, and today's topic is something that I've been preparing for a little while, and I'm super excited to share some of the findings with you guys. It was originally drafted as one of the essays on my Substack, and I think today I've converted it into a video. If you're interested, I've included the full reading list, including some of the titles that I'm going to reference in this video essay, down in the description down below. So go check it out if that's something you're into. But nevertheless, today we're going to talk about love from a philosophical perspective and to provide certain critiques for some of the ideas that people have about love nowadays. So let's start from the very beginning, which is a really weird thing that tends to happen to people who are in love or in the process of falling in love. Do you know one of those people who's got giant personalities? You know, they have grand proclamations about, I'm never going to fall in love. My life is the only life that matters. I'm never going to find a space to love anyone else in my life. And what happens? When they fall in love, they tend to go through this period of chilling out. And what happens is there's a very noticeable character change with people who tend to fall in love. And they turn from someone who's entirely trapped within themselves into someone who's willing to extend their identities outward, given the appearance that they've chilled out a little bit. And in this case, I'm talking about healthy romantic relationships. I mean, there are many other manifestations of relationships which could be toxic, and that's not gonna make you chill out. In fact, that's gonna do the polar opposite. In case you find one of your friends in a healthy relationship, this tends to happen. Some of the extreme behaviors, they start to get sanded down, not out of conformity, but simply out of the sense of like, they're no longer living just for themselves, and there's a expansion of identity. There's a general theme of change that happens with love. And the same tends to happen with some of my friends. Before they fell in love, they were one way. And after they fall in love, they are sort of enjoying a new perspective on life. And successful couples tend to talk about their single selves in a past tense. When I was single, when I was this, or when I was that. However, that view of love, which is the contention of today's video, is under attack. And of course, a lot of people are going to get angry at the intro sequence. They're going to say things like, love is about maintaining exactly who you are. Love is about standing up for yourself in an argument, in a relationship. Do not put up with anything that your partner does that you don't like. Essentially, nowadays, people want someone who would not fight with them. And people are under the fantasy that when you enter a relationship that you can basically escape the relationship without a single scratch and without changing yourself in the slightest. And this tendency sometimes can run so deep that some of us are inherently afraid to love, because let's face it, the greater the love, the greater we risk getting hurt in a relationship in case something goes south. So in a sense, the perfect scenario of love nowadays demands very little change to ourselves, which allows no conflicts and no painful resolutions. And this is something that we're all running away from when we're in a romantic situation. But I'm here to argue, and here's the main contention of this video essay, to love is to change. There's no way around it, and this is basically due to the three basic conditions of love. Number one, love requires attachment. In Ellen Badiou's book, In Praise of Love, he quoted a slogan from a dating site, quote, "Get perfect love without suffering," unquote. If you've spent any time on one of these dating apps, you're going to realize this sneaky thing where people are trying to sell themselves off as solid and cohesive narratives. They have their political leanings, they have the kind of food that they like, the environment where they hang out, even down to the most minute detail, like what is their comfort movie to watch on a Saturday night, or how great they are with their little nephew. So as a consequence, when we're on these platforms, we get this false impression of people as monoliths, or simply unchanging narratives. And basically, your job as a suitor or a dater is to find one of these cohesive narratives that matches with your narrative, and bam, you both don't have to change anything about yourselves, and that's a perfect relationship, right? Right? Well, not exactly. The Korean-German philosopher byung-chul called the state of indifference a mechanical and spatial side by side. In a sense, we view this person that we've met on a dating app as a useful accessory to reaffirm our identities, because they are supposed to fit our narrative, and somehow if we have the right traits, we too can fit into their narratives. And as a consequence, the other as pain disappears. Love as consumption, which reifies the other into a sex object, does not hurt. And true story, before I've met my current partner, I spent a number of years on dating apps, and this was exactly the kind of thing Byung-chul was talking about. Sometimes a person could be so perfect to the point that they merely turn into a side-by-side kind of person next to me. There was no spark or attraction. And worst of all, there was no fear of this pain in case I lose this person. It was just very much neutral. We get along, and that's kind of the end of it. But sometimes Pain sets up the very foundation for you to really lean into an episode of passionate love. The pain of missing someone, the pain of needing to see someone at 2 a.m. in the morning, and the pain of constantly ruminating about this new person who you've met. And sometimes, even the harshest breakups could trigger a retrospective fondness. Dr. Bigelow told Louie in the TV sitcom Louie,
"This is love, missing her. You're so lucky, you're like a walking poem. The bad part is when you forget her, when you don't care about her, when you don't care about anything." So what I would give to have that feeling again.
In short, love is attachment, and it takes a certain amount of courage for you to face the consequences of losing this love in your life. It's also entertaining the possibility that this period of love, as great as it is, the greater the degree of love, the more we risk getting hurt, and it's also the humility to entertain that possibility. But at the same time, this courage sets up the foundation for eros. It gives us life and passion. Quote, "And where a human being can suffer the pain of love, there he is really present. There, whether he is aware of it or not, he has also loved." And now let's move on to the second condition of love, which is that love opens up a whole new world. It's a stereotype that if you go out with the right person, the world is going to look brighter, you're going to be happier, everything tastes better, and it certainly is true. Again, the French philosopher Ellen Badiou called love a two-scene, a theater meant for a duel. And love in this sense is derived out of the other, or of difference. So in other words, if you find someone who's exactly like you, that wouldn't make for a very good relationship because you two would just be looking at the world the same way, again. Whereas a true passionate affair is usually birthed out of some kind of difference or some kind of opposites attracting or some kind of mystery that the other person possesses. And of course, this notion of mystery and this notion of difference and the other contradicts dating advice nowadays. Your ideal girlfriend or boyfriend is supposed to love everything you love. They're supposed to like Marvel movies. They're supposed to like the video game you like to play over the weekend. They're not supposed to contradict you in public. They're not supposed to point out your flaws. And of course, in this timid dating culture, any healthy fight could be framed as a deal breaker, and this is why people are breaking up in record numbers. And all of this is based on a misunderstanding of conflict, because conflict is what allows an event to happen. And in this case, an event is a glimmer into the truth, and an event is something that arises out of contradiction that allows you to see a fuller picture. The grand philosopher of German idealism, Hegel, once remarked that for your mind to grow and for your mind to ascend to a higher plane, the mind has to preserve itself under contradictions. And in byung-chul's words, conflict forces the mind to overcome the painful contradiction by developing into a higher form, whereas excessive agreement, excessive compliance, and a partner who's not willing to fight back makes us very rigid ideologically, and a relationship at some point is going to develop into a numb repetition. There's nothing new under the sun, you're not really forcing each other to grow, and that makes for a pretty dead relationship. Hence, if you're really in love with someone who has your best interest in mind, realize that they're supposed to trigger you, they're supposed to contradict our flattering views of ourselves, and they're supposed to, in certain times, use conflict as a means for us to heal ourselves. In other words, a loving relationship is supposed to make us see a brand new world from the vantage point of two people. And through seeing the world through the vantage point of the two, it's going to give us an expressed laneway to personal growth. And that's the transformative power of contradiction and conflict. And last but not least, the third condition of love is that love keeps us grounded. Let's return to something that we talked about at the start of this video, which is with people who are very much set on their own goals. They just want to chart out their own paths in life. And somehow, sometimes when they fall in love, they turn into a completely different person because now all of a sudden they're cooking more. All of a sudden they're enjoying the simple pleasures more. Why is that the case? Why does that happen? How does a person who is so bombastic and self-assured turn into someone who's a little bit, more mundane? So here's the thing. When we're alone, it's a lot easier for us to conjure up a self-image, for us to conjure up identifications. So in other words, I am this person because of these things I do here. I am that kind of person because of this thing that I've been through here. We're more prone to a kind of narcissistic self-reference. We're always thinking about the world in terms of ourselves, and we're always inventing new stories about how we ought to act in the world to project our own image forward into the world. And small doses of this narcissism is extremely useful for some something like, building a personal brand. But in larger doses, these self-referential tendencies will hollow out the self, and at the same time, it could turn into self-destructive behaviors, and it could turn into you losing your way because there's no opposite force to oppose who you believe you are. Byung-chul again observed in the Burnout Society, quote, entirely incapable of stepping outward, of standing outside of itself, of relying on the other, on the world, self-reference locks its jaw on itself. Paradoxically, it leads the self to hollow and empty out. It wears out in a rat race it runs against itself, unquote. And in the words of that business guru from NYU Stern, who is also a self-proclaimed narcissist, it's really hard to read a label from inside of the bottle. The kind of selves that we crave for ourselves are in a sense illusory because it's really hard to distill down something so unique and something so volatile and something so complex into a stable identity. And as Badiou observed, the subject is always universal and cannot be reduced to the law of this or the identity of that. And if we don't have a dose of healthy resistance from someone who loves us, a friend, a lover, or someone in your family, we run the risk of resorting to performative and extreme behavior with no corrections. And it is only when people supply a challenge to our self-image, to our noble self-conception or decrepit self-conceptions, can we really discover who we are. As Han noted, quote, resistance provides an outline of the self. It draws its contours, unquote. And all of this rounds back to one of the favorite things that my partner and I love saying to each other, which is, I hate that you're right. Sometimes we get into a fight, but at the end of the fight, one of us has to say, well, I hate that you're right. I hate the fact that you've constructed or you've revealed a version of myself that's a tad bit too accurate, and it's not too flattering. Yet at the same time, that self somehow seems a little more real and grounded, and that supplies us with that kind of stable peace with ourselves, and that forms the gradual self-discovery that we need. So in summary, let's go back to the original argument. To love is to change, because number one, love is attachment, and with any attachment, there's pain involved. Number two, love allows us to see a brand new world, because we're no longer perceiving the world from a scene of one, but a theater for a duo. And number three, love provides us with our outlines and contours. Sometimes it means revealing to you all of the unflattering facts about yourself, but that also keeps you grounded, and that keeps you humble, and keeps you willing to work through this damaged part of you. And before we go here, here's a wonderful poem by the 15th century Italian poet Marsilio Ficino, who wrote, when you love me, and as I love you, I recover myself, lost in the first place by my own neglect of myself in you, who preserve me. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and speaking of supplying you with a completely different perspective on life, today's episode is in part brought to you by Brilliant.org. In short, if you have an appetite for the STEM subjects, and if you want that scientific way of viewing the world, Brilliant is where you learn all of that by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in mathematics, data analysis, programming, and artificial intelligence. And just like some of you guys, I too was traumatized by K-12 mathematics courses that are frankly so boring that I always fall asleep in class, but Brilliant is where you learn by actually practicing problem sets. Their first principle approach helps you to build understanding from the ground up. And you can practice all the key concepts from these classes via problem sets developed by professionals from prestigious institutions. And of course, just like how studying literature and philosophy is not just about reading books, but about developing a new way of looking at the world, studying some of these subjects in the STEM disciplines also gives you the keen ability to problem solve, which you can carry into whichever field you operate in. And on top of that, because Brilliant.org is so fun and easy to use, it is also going to encourage you to build a daily learning habit. And again, one of the recent classes that I've completed and really enjoyed was the How Large Language Models Work series from Brilliant.org. So if you want some hands-on experience with these language models and to understand how machines are capable of producing paragraphs to pages of writing based on prompts, this immersive AI workshop is definitely for you, and it is going to teach you the importance of data training in artificial intelligence. And as a lucky viewer of this channel, you can try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/rcwalden or click the link in the description down below. And with the link, you also get 20% off an annual premium subscription for Brilliant.org. Thank you, Brilliant, for supporting today's video, and thank you for watching today's extended exploration on love. This is Waldun. I want you to take care, and I will be back with another video very soon. Goodbye.